Hey, what's happening, everybody? Yeah, it's me. I'm back. It is the Friday FARcast. And excuse me, I am flying solo today. And so I'm just going to kind of hang out for a little bit and wait for people to begin to assemble in the Universal Hall of the 11th house, commonly known and warmly known as Chatlandia. So I'm just going to wait for people to begin to file in. Let's just see what's happening there in that front. We got Jennifer and Steve and Ian, and hey, Steve and Andres, what's going on, man? Nice to see you. There's Judy, and then there's our good friend Amy and Maury. So what's happening, everybody? It's a Friday. It's Friday the 17th of January, and there's a lot going on that I want to cover, sort of circle back with, catch up on. This is going to be kind of more of a factual show today. Yesterday was fairly philosophical in some ways, and yesterday's show was kind of hardcore, and I think that there were some people that kind of had a hard time with yesterday's show. And in fact, I got a comment from one of the listeners that they really just couldn't sit through the whole thing. And, one of the things that I try to do with some of this stuff is process and, work some of the things out, and on a personal level and on a collective level. And I've always felt in my own life, in my own way, that I've been a kind of a collective and transpersonal being, meaning that what I'm sometimes experiencing or bringing into my field, or what I'm moving through, isn't just mine. It's part of this collective energy in a lot of ways. And if you look at my chart, it's pretty much how it's set up. I don't have any real personal points of contact with my chart, with the exception of Saturn in the second house. Other than that, it's all kind of up there and out there. So there are times when I find myself involved in a process that, excuse me, doesn't always feel like it's mine, that it's something else, that I'm working out, working through some other thing. So in the case of yesterday's show, there was a lot of really heavy duty friction going on the Facebook page, the 11th house Facebook page. And it was very interesting. And I spoke to some of that as well. And, both yesterday and clearly, Jasper, clearly on the Facebook page. But there are other things happening too. It was really, really weird. It was like people were acting out their own psychosis in some ways. Like there was this one person who accused me of deleting a post that was biblical. It was from Romans, and it was in relationship to this post I put up about Roosh V. I didn't delete the post. And the only other person who has access to moderation on that page is my buddy Rob, who started that page. He didn't delete the post. So I don't know. Was that person delusional? Was that person accused? I have no idea. I wouldn't have a problem with her quoting some Bible verse. And this is somebody who's been kind of in and out and on the fence, and kind of sketchy. Left the group, came back, and there was things going on. Because I watch people. Sorry, it's a habit, but I have to, right? You have to watch what's going on. If you don't watch what's going on, you don't understand any of the people and their output and their tendencies, and then you're not a really good manager of that property or that entity. So she said, well, I'll go find a new group. I'm like, fine, go find a new group. And then I cut her out and I blocked her. I blocked her from the 11th house, and I blocked her from my stream. It's like, but there was a sense that she was acting out some form of psychosis, where like there was some level of persecution, and we get this, it's like, there's like, oh, wow, let's see how real you are, or let's see how open you are, or let's see how really truthful you are. This is the process where, this idea of being scapegoated or being put on a cross. This is what happens when people move into kind of the more public domain, which I'm not a big fish in the sea, but I'm a public persona. So this is what happens. And I saw this movie a long time ago. It was on Ken Kesey. Ken Kesey, of course, the electric Kool-Aid acid test. And it was a documentary about his life and how he was, kind of this Claus celeb because of his time working at Stanford and, being this pioneer, this radical, wild and woolly West Coast pioneer, this tripper. And then he leaves. He leaves the whole scene. He gets a farm and he starts, raising. It's a dairy farm in Oregon. He just, says, see you later. I'm going to write these 2 novels, one of which was incredibly successful. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And the other was also made into a movie called Sometimes a Great Notion about logging and logging families in Oregon, which is where Ken Kesey was originally from. But in this documentary, he began to talk about how at one point everything pivoted and he went from being this kind of icon, this iconic figure, to being somebody who was crucified. And when I saw that, the thought that came into my head, that first they put you on a pedestal and then they put you on a cross. And this is what happened. I'm not saying that that's what happened to me, but I think that this is what happens. And then there's this, oh, you're not real, you're not down, you're not true, all this bullshit. So there was a little bit of that kind of going on, but it's his own person's personal process and quest for some kind of purity and clearly not clear on certain things. So then there was this other situation where there was this kind of nasty debate going on inside of another post. And this one person was kind of in attack mode with another person that was inside the chat. And, it's like, I don't care if people get into arguments or try and sort, or they start, flaming each other, because you can learn a lot about who you are, how you react, how you respond, all those things. And I made a comment, and I thought, and I said, ironically, I think the two of you are probably more in alignment philosophically than you might know. And then this other person says, respectfully, no, I'm just basically fucking with her because I have nothing else better to do. So instead of going into a long lecture about, well, maybe you ought to think about this or think about that. And it's like, well, if you don't have anything else better to do, then get the fuck out of here. Okay. We're not curing cancer, but I don't want people malingering on that page. It's like, don't malinger. Don't just be contrary to be contrary. And you got plenty of other places on Facebook to do that. Same thing. Block, see you later. Go find another group that you can go malinger and go fuck with somebody. Right. And maybe the fuckery was kind of astrological and that person had to go through some of that fuckery. I'm not omnipotent, but at the end of the day, it's like, I didn't want that person part of the group. Just didn't. There's a lot of stuff coming up for people now. There's a lot of stuff coming up for people now. And this is part and parcel of the eclipse energy, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. We had the moon in Libra squaring off against Saturn and squaring off against Pluto. Trying to find balance, and there's sensitivity involved. And look, if you haven't dealt with your shit right now, it's really messy. There's a lot of poo right now. It's coming up. It doesn't mean you can't deal with it. It just means you got to put your hazmat suit on and start wading through the shit. It's just the way it is. You know, if you've been working on yourself for the past year, year and a half, trying to get clear, dealing with core issues, when this stuff comes up, you can kind of deal with it, right? You kind of deal with it. You kind of like, you know, okay, well, I can take this on or take this on, but steady as she goes. And the result of people being whacked out or knocked out has a lot to do with the fact that they haven't dealt with stuff. And we're not perfect. We're not machines. We're humans. We will err. We all make mistakes, right? It's what you do with it. It's how you learn from your mistakes, and you can move on, hopefully. And this is what's happening now. And so over on Facebook, holy shit. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. We've been running this group now for probably about, I don't know, 8 or 9 months. And it's all been kind of moving in a nice direction. But the other thing I was looking at is the size of the group. And even though we're not all under the same roof, there's some really interesting studies that have been done about group size. Apparently, the perfect size for a group is just below 150. You know who figured this out? Gore-Tex. The Gore-Tex people figured this out, because the way the Gore-Tex company, of course, we're talking about the Gore family and Al Gore, the way that they figured this out is that they would have these, very successful company, and they would take on more workers, more projects, and they found that when they got to a certain size, that became much more difficult to manage people inside of those groups, right? People became more territorial, more hostile. There was more kind of room for, fractious divisions. And so they figured out that about 150 is the perfect size for the group. So when they would get to a certain size with one of their groups, they would approach 150, they'd split it off, and there'd be its own group. And they'd start another group that would be part of some other part of the process. So what I noticed about the Facebook group is that we're up around 380 now. And so it kind of conforms or coheres to this model about numbers, and that below 150, everything kind of operates at a smoother level. And when you get to double that and more than that, it's not really about the quantity. It's like in group dynamics, bigger isn't always better. It's better to have smaller groups or pods than it is to have these massive collectives. Like, I guarantee you that 150 kind of well-trained and turned on and switched on people could accomplish a lot more than 5,000 people from a tactical level, right? Because 5,000, you may have the numbers, you may have the horde, you may have the mass, but what you don't have is you don't have the coherence. So it's just a notice on my part. But, put that into the, current astrological conditions, and man, we've got sort of a heavy kind of time. It's a very heavy time. And a lot of, again, what's coming up are a lot of these core issues, and people not really, it's the blind spots. We all have them. We all have these blind spots. And if you've worked on yourself a lot, then you can recognize not only your own blind spot, but other people's blind spots as well. And it's again, because of the work that I do, both individually and through group dynamics, I don't miss a lot. Okay. You may think, that, I mean, if I am really at my best, at the top of my game, I'm like seeing a lot. I'm seeing the playing field. And for better or worse, for better or worse. And, I've always had, and again, I've always had this capacity. When I was a little kid and I played baseball, like 9, 10 years old, I would go through every position on the team. And before the pitch, I would know what every position needed to do. I'd run through every, based on where the runners are, I would run that program through my brain. And of course, I had my middle period where some of that got dazed and confused, but it's managed to stay with me. So case in point, somebody in the group was being very exclamatory. And it was about this whole idea around language. And it basically came down to this person saying, oh, you're angry, right? Because when you get involved in a discussion and you start pulling things apart, a person, if they cannot defend their position or point of view, what they'll do is they'll go ad hominem. They'll say, oh, you're a racist. Oh, you're a misanthrope. Oh, well, not misanthrope. Oh, you're misogynist. Oh, you're a fascist. Oh, you're a homophobe. Oh, you're hateful. Oh, you're angry. So this is like, when you hear that in any kind of discussion, you know that that person is backpedaling, but that's their shield. That's their shield. And when you continue to go through that and continue to probe that and kind of pin that person or that idea up against the wall, you'll see what actually really happens, right? You'll see what happens. They'll either leave or they'll throw another thing at you or another thing at you. And unfortunately, this is kind of where we are now, because most people haven't really dealt with their stuff. You know, this is a time where you got to kind of be online. And I'm not talking about online like this, but just online in general. If you're not, your shit's going to come up. And we all have it. Nobody's perfect, you know. But the idea here is to minimize it, understand it, so that you can get clear and have other potentialities and possibilities come into your life. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this person that brought it up, it was kind of on the attack mode. First of all, attacking my use of the word tranny, because I had it in quotes and I was referring to something else. I was being attacked for that. That I was doing the same thing, that I wasn't being respectful. It's in quotes, okay? It's in quotes. And I don't think that there's anything out there that says I can't use the word tranny if I want to. Now, you may say, oh my God, that's being hateful and despicable. Well, you know, you can always leave my YouTube channel. And I'm not using it in a disrespectful tone. And even in that moment, I was referring to it in a sense where it had already been brought up. And I was being accused of repeating the same thing. And then I pushed back on that, and I pushed back on that. And then it was like, you're angry. You see, it was like, you're angry. And then I pushed back on that. And then, of course, it changed. And the bottom line is, I know what's going on with this person. They're like not in the best place in their lives. Not for where they're supposed, not for where they are chronologically. And they're going through a lot of personal shit, right? They're going through a lot of stuff. And yet it's being projected out into that page and out into me and out into some other people. And if they took one step back and saw what was going on, they would see, yeah, you're right. Maybe I am projecting. Maybe I am wounded. Maybe I am hurt. Maybe I'm the one that's angry. Maybe I'm the one that's angry. Maybe I need to own my anger instead of projecting my anger onto you because I think you're angry, right? And this is going on all the time now. So there are a lot of cross signals. There's a lot of sort of broken code and distorted transmissions. It's all happening. And the best thing to do is, again, try to stay as clear as possible. You know, I want to, by the way, commend my buddy Rob Chopra, who did start that 11th house group. And I'm not going to say anything that people don't already know. Rob's a pretty public Aquarian person, and he decided to, you know, go sober for the month of January. And I want to congratulate him and support him, and hope he can continue to ground that and gain some clarity during this time, because I don't think this is a time of inebriation. I just don't. You know, we're living in an Apollonian phase of our experience. We're no longer in the throes of Dionysus. We're no longer in the throes of sort of this, you know, lunar cult. That's not where it's at now. This is not because we've seen it now. We can look all around and we can see the human refuse, unfortunately, of that kind of Dionysic or Dionysian kind of plunge into the escape from so-called reality, which for a lot of these people is a yawning abyss. And in a lot of ways, I don't blame them. You know, their lives have got turned upside down and they're horrible. And they don't, in many cases, they haven't had a lot of support. In many cases, I read a statistic that 27% of the homeless in California are they're veterans. You know, and they had to go through and fight these horrible wars and watch their buddies get blown up by IEDs, and just because these assholes lied about uranium and yellow cake and rods and all this bullshit and sold it to the American people through the news agencies, Fox and CNN and MSNBC. Not one of them has ever really had to answer for it. And we've been dealing with this now since 2003, which is when it all really began to go down in a big way. Nobody ever talks about it. You know, it's always forward, marching onward, you know, let's take out this dictator and this dictator. And, you know, just when we're supposed to get out of the Middle East or get out of Iraq, we have a crisis. And it happens, right? So all in all, if you can maintain your lucidity, if you can maintain your clarity, if you can have some support with lucid and clear people in your life, this is what you need more than anything. This is the mana for what's going to help you get through this time. I used to, at times, self-medicate because things were very intense, you know, and this is not a time where we can do that. The self-medication will boomerang back on you. It'll boomerang. It's not going to work anymore. And we're headed into some very intense territory. And I kind of want to go over some of that today with today's show. So I just wanted to sort of round things up so that you guys can understand sort of what's going on in a certain dynamic, just collectively. You know, people are starting to lose their shit. There's a lot of pressure. But remember, you know, this is what I teach about in my course on astrology. Saturn is gravity. And somebody say, well, there's no such thing as gravity. Well, I mean, just wrap your head around it for a moment. Think of the concept of gravity, pressure. We understand what pressure is. Saturn is pressure. So when we have a Saturn-Pluto conjunction, not only do we have this collective pressure, but the individual pressure that's being exerted in our charts. We also have the Plutonian element, which is intense, powerful, and relentless and ruthless, right? Pluto is ruthless and relentless. It represents the underworld, right? When we think of the underworld, especially in terms of places like Chicago, we think of people like, you know, Al Capone and Chicago, you know, crime boss and crime gangs and crime lords, and the ruthlessness that's associated with that kind of mentality, right? So Pluto has that capacity. So we have this intensity, this relentlessness, this ruthlessness combined with Saturn. So when we look at something like Soleimani, again, this is another angle. We're just, you know, a lot of times astrology and events, they're like fractals, right? They're like a Picasso painting, you know, where things are kind of fragmented up, right? So when we look at like what happened with Soleimani, it's like a gangland hit. It's like a gangland hit. It's very Al Capone-ish. It's very underworldy. It's like, we're going to take out your gang leader. And I've asserted for a long time now that what we're dealing with at a political level are gangs. They're gangs. They're gangs disguised as governments. And the people that are running these countries are, for all intents and purposes, crime bosses. And it's always been that way for a very long time. I mean, look, Bill Clinton came from a crime family. He came from a criminal family, a criminal syndicate. His uncle ran a brothel, was numbers running, you know, drugs. Basically his uncle was a pimp, He was a pimp. He was involved in drugs. He was involved in local crime. And that was an influence on Bill Clinton, the roots of the Dixie Mafia. Kennedy came from a crime family. The Kennedy family was involved with all these other families during Prohibition, like the Bronfman family, the Onassis family. They were bringing in, and you can look this up online, and you'll see some debates about whether or not the Kennedys were actually involved in having speakeasies. They did. They absolutely did. How do you think they got tight with Aristotle Onassis? He was bringing rum up from South America, along with heroin from South America, or through South America. Is probably bringing it from other places, but it was coming up on his ships through South America. So the Kennedys were a crime family. They knew the crime bosses. That's how old man Kennedy got his first son elected. He reached out to the Italian mob, and he reached out to the Jewish mob. So what about Nixon? Wasn't part of a crime family, which is why he didn't last. Same with Johnson. Johnson was not part of a crime family. He didn't last either, by the way. But the Bushes are a crime family. Absolutely. The Bushes have their own syndicate, right? I mean, if you look at what the Bushes were doing, they were bringing freaking cocaine up from South America. And when push came to shove and things got really hot, they inserted themselves into the drug wars in Colombia. And they started taking out the competition. When Noriega wanted more money from the whole, Iran-Contra Panama cocaine connection, they took him out too. It was a gang hit. This is what happens. So when we look at what happened with Soleimani, it was not as much as of an assassination as it was a gangland style hit. That's Saturn and Pluto conjunction. Pluto being the lord of the underworld. It's the way it is. And people need to kind of awaken to the fact. And there are, there's semi-legitimate gangs, very much illegitimate gangs. And then there are gangs that are, sanctified. Like the UN is a freaking gang. It's a global gang. It's a gang that's put together and empowered by people from the Council on Foreign Relations and a Trilateral Commission and the World Bank. They all have their interests running and tied through the UN. So the world is run by gangs, and the gang lords are people with suits and ties, and sometimes they have initials after their first name. They're accredited. And once people understand this and get the hang of it, like, holy shit, the Republicans and the Democrats, they're gangs, and sometimes gangs work together, and sometimes they don't. If it's in a gang's interest to support another gang and have their trade, like, so for instance, I'll give you an example. The drugs coming from South America, great example. Great example. Why do you think the drugs from South America are allowed to come in this country? Because on a governmental side, both the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans have agreed to it on some level. Like, you don't think that the FBI or some of the, perhaps the CIA, you don't think they know, where these people are, what they're doing, and how these things are getting up here, and really who's behind protecting them on this side of the border? You don't think they know that? Of course they know that. Of course they know. They have tons of intelligence at their disposal. So why don't they do anything about it? Really, I mean, every now and then you'll see some raids. They'll take out somebody like El Chapo. They always do that, right? They always get like one person. There's always like that one sacrificial goat. For pedophilia and kind of the Me Too thing, it's Harvey Weinstein. For money, it was Bernie Madoff. For drugs, it was El Chapo. There's always that one. It's like, oh, we got one. See, we got one. The sacrificial lamb, and while everything else allows, extends it out to happen. So again, they're even the Republicans and the Democrats are gangs. The squad, it could be easily the gang of four because there's four of them, right? So once people understand this and know this, and then there's like occult gangs. What are these groups that are secreted and occulted, and they meet behind scenes, and they've got secret handshakes, and they've got secret robes and secret aprons? They're a gang too. They're a gang too. That's really what they are. And then and if you really want to look at what happened in 2001 with 9/11, It was like an extortion scam. Oh, look what happened here. You need protection. That's right. You need protection. Hey, we got this thing called the Patriot Act. And boy, is it going to protect you. It's really, you got to vote on it because you need protection. Oh, yeah. Don't worry about your rights. It's okay. You're going to be protected. Oh, yeah. I know the travel thing. It's going to be a bit of a hassle, but you'll be protected. It's an extortion scam is what it was. And that's what gangs do. They extort you. They extort, oh, okay. But here, we'll pay our tax money, and that's the extortion. That's the extortion money. That's what you pay. That's the fee. And so if you continue to do that, theoretically things are safe, aren't they? Meanwhile, the gang is getting stronger, more powerful, because they've got the assets and the funds to reinforce their activities. I mean, just be aware of this. And this is the South Node again coming into play. So if you think somebody's on your side, you think you're your friend, know and understand that they have affiliations, contracts, and agreements that they have with other people, other affiliations, and other organizations that they have to adhere to. And yes, that includes Trump, that they have to adhere to it. Now, the one thing about Trump, of course, is he's the wild card. And could he actually break free and overturn everything by playing 5D chess? I'm open to it. I'm certainly open to it. I know his chart. He's certainly capable of it. But you also have to understand these affiliations and associations. How do people get to be in a certain place? Right? So let me check in with you guys and see where you're at. See what's going on. Let's see. Let's see. 9/11 truth is inevitable. I hope so, Charles. I really do hope so. British accredited registry. It's actually pretty simple. It's job protection. Some of that, yes. Jobs or territory, right? Oh, Jasper. Jasper's too much. You guys catch Rosie on the Matrix MASH with Emily? How funny was she? How funny was she? If LBJ had better gang connections, he would have been in for a second term. I'm having the week from hell, and my damaged knee is the least of it. Oh, I'm sorry, Lynn. You're kind of caught in the Capricorn Cancer eclipse vortex, aren't you? You'll get better. You can handle it. You'll get better. Say a little prayer to our friend Lynn in Panama. All right, look into UNESCO. Yes, yes, yes. Another gang. These days, it looks like Trump is more about protecting his presidency than giving the government back to the people. Paula, I think that he is been placed in a very precarious position, which is what happens when people are impeached. It is another version of an extortion scam, right? It's like, oh, we've got you now. We've got you now. We got the goods on you now, and you better do what we say, or else you're going to be fucked, and you're going to lose your presidency, and your kids are going to lose all their money, and you're going to lose all your money, and you're going to wind up going to jail, which would be the worst thing that could ever happen to you. Your kids might go to jail. I mean, it can get really heavy, right? Really, really heavy. And imagine being in that position. Imagine being in that position. What would happen? Plus, there's also the agreements that had already been made, right? So it's not an easy place to be. And we saw it with Clinton. We saw Clinton with his tiny little testicles in the vice grip. And what did he do? He agreed to go in and start to bomb the shit out of Bosnia and the Balkan states. He agreed to that. He agreed to put on further sanctions on Iraq, have a no-fly zone over Iraq. So if there were things trying to go in and out of Iraq that they didn't like, the United States would shoot the planes down. That's what was happening during the Clinton era. And does he agree to that if he's not, doesn't have his peanuts in the vice grip, right? I don't know. Maybe he's just business as usual and la-di-da, but he was caught. He was caught. He was caught with a blue dress, devil with a blue dress on. All right. I wanted to do a little bit of follow-up here on some stuff and kind of get into the subject matter of the day. You see, the reason why you want to stay clear is when these revelations start to come, you got to be able to handle them. Because if you can't handle them, like you'll have a sense of being inundated and drowning and not being able to get by or get through. And frankly, the other option, which is to take yourself out, isn't really a very good option. I don't believe that suicide, as much as there are spiritual, so-called spiritual leaders who believe that suicide is a reasonable option, it's not. It's clearly not, based on everything that I've read about people that have come back from the other side. It's not a reasonable option. And you may think it is, but you're not escaping. You're just not escaping. And I could be talking to somebody directly or indirectly, because guess what? You take your hell with you, and it's worse. It's absolutely worse. You know why? Because here you've got some weird filters, right? Like if you were able to really see your demons manifest before your very eyes, you'd be having like a Lady Gaga experience, because apparently Lady Gaga cannot sleep alone. She's got to have somebody in the room. She's had all the mirrors taken down from her place. She doesn't want to look in the mirror because what she sees are the demons, right? It'd be like having the DTs, heavy duty DTs 24/7. If you were able to see, and maybe that's what the DTs are about, by the way, delirium tremens. But if you're able to see your demons 24/7, the thought forms of your fear, your rage, your discontent, all these things, your guilt, your anxiety, right? If you're able to see them, lower fourth dimensional level entities manifesting right before your eyes as your thought forms, that's what it'd be like if you killed yourself. Because you would wind up not only dealing with your shit that you haven't dealt with, but it would be magnified. So, think twice before you take that exit stage left. Best thing to do is to work on it and deal with it, because this is the place to do it. And if you have a soul, which I do believe most of you do, right? And I would say that 100% soul participation inside Chatlandia, by the way. And I would say probably 100% participation of people that watch this, you have a soul. You didn't have one, you probably say, oh, fuck that guy. And I'm not saying it's better or worse. Having a soul makes you, and I don't believe everybody has souls, by the way. That thought came into my head many, many years ago. And why? Because a lot of people act like soulless motherfuckers. The proof is in the pudding, right? Because they had a soul, they may not work that way or act that way. Anyway, this is a place where it gets worked out. This is the compression of Saturn. This is the realm of Saturn. This is the hypercube. We're in the hypercube. So you get to work it out. Because if you don't work it out here, you're gonna move on. And it's not any easier. In fact, it's worse. It's absolutely worse. So do the work here now. Get it over with. Get it done with. So that when you move on, it's like you've lightened your load, and you can take a deep breath. Oh, by the way, before I get into the next business of the day, I saw a great documentary last night. And maybe somebody can find the link and put it in Chatlandia. If not, I'll put it in the show page. It was a documentary about these ping pong players who are over 80. And they play in the World Over 80 Ping Pong Championship in Inner Mongolia. It's brilliant, this documentary. It's absolutely brilliant because, number one, it showcases people that were born from a very different place and a very different time. These are people that went, and most of them, in fact, all of them in this movie, with the exception of one dude who's a character, he's this Chinese Mongolian guy. They're all European. There's one Australian. They're all European. So they all lived through the war, World War II, born in the 20s or late 20s. Really, really great documentary. There's a woman who's 100 years old from Australia, and she's playing ping pong in these championships. Really cool stuff. And this is like Capricorn fuel. You know, if you want some good Capricorn fuel, go find this documentary. And the one of the stories in there which really grabbed me was this German woman, and she lost her husband to cancer, and her life just bottomed out, really bottomed out. She lost it, totally lost it. She wound up, just like she stopped eating. She said, when you don't eat with the person you love, food doesn't taste the same. When I think about it, it makes me even want to cry, right? I mean, that kind of intense bonding, you know? And then she just continued to just go downhill. She had a stroke. She lost some of her functioning. She was falling downstairs. She said one night she went to the local bakery at 11 o'clock at night. They weren't open. And she started screaming and she was angry. I mean, she was losing it, right? And then she realized that I can't live alone. So she goes into this senior center, and a lot of her functioning was off. She'd had a stroke. And of course, they have these rec rooms, and this is in Germany, in the senior center. And they talked to one of the guys that runs this rec room. He said the first thing we had her do was bend over and pick up a ping pong ball. And she could barely do that. So she's getting turned on the ping pong later in life. Like in her 80s, she's getting turned on the ping. She's playing ping pong for 2 years. She got really good at it, and she got all of her functioning back. All of her functioning. And then she's off to Inner Mongolia doing this over 80 ping pong tournament. And there's another German woman that I don't know if she knew her or not, but they teamed up together and they won the doubles championship. And you got to see this movie. It is really a kind of a wonderful sort of paean to growing old, because these people were very, they were individuals, and they were kind of eccentric and still in the game of life. They loved life. And ping pong was this thing that kept them young, right? Ping pong is such an interesting sport because you've got to have reaction time. It's left, right, left, right, left, right. You got to use your brain. You got to use your body. It's a really interesting game. So if you want to stay young, maybe playing ping pong is one of the keys and the secrets of staying young. Okay, so I wanted to give you guys an update on some of the Clean Water Fred stuff. I haven't talked about it lately because we've been in a very deep legal bunker, okay? Now, what I'm going to share with you is public knowledge. It is a press release. I'm not going to share a whole lot more beyond that because I'm not supposed to. But Clean Water Fred and Laura Presley's group out of Austin is suing the city of Fredericksburg. It's official. This is very real now. And what's interesting is that the election took place during a Mercury retrograde. And we did the recount, and guess what happened? We found anomalies. Let me read you the press release. This is a really, really good press release. And this will give you kind of an update as to where we are with everything. I'll just read it to you here. November 5th. Let's see if I can just bring this out a little bit more, make it bigger. There we go. November 5th wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. Did the Stop the Fluoridation measure really fail? Lawsuit filed contesting results of Fredericksburg Charter Amendment election. Did the November 5th, 2019 measure to stop adding commercial grade fluoride chemicals to Fredericksburg's public water supply really fail by 63%? It's a huge number. And our polling, right, our casual polling, unofficial polling with people both going door to door and at the polls as we talk to people did not reflect a 63% split. Many in Fredericksburg didn't think so, and as a result signed a petition for manual recount. After questions arose about the legality of the November 22nd recount, 2 voters filed suit against Mayor Langerhans, contesting the City of Fredericksburg Charter Amendment election result. Jeanette Hormuth, treasurer of the PAC that supported the measure to end fluoridation, and Jerry Farley, an election judge of Precinct 2, filed an election contest on December 31st, asserting that the outcome of the Charter Amendment election, as shown by the official recount results and canvass, cannot be known because the election appears to be tainted by material illegalities, irregularities, and potential fraud. As cited in an 18-page election contest, supplemented with over 900 pages of evidence, they contend election officials recounted votes that were legally insufficient, failed to recount legal votes, made mistakes, and or engaged in illegal conduct. What are you doing? According to Texas law, ballots must be signed by the presiding judge of the precinct where votes were cast, and if ballots are not pre-signed by the election judge, the ballots should not be given to voters. In the petition, Ms. Hormuth and Mr. Farley assert that over 400 election day ballots used in the recount from Precinct 4 did not contain the signature of the election judge. They claim the ballots were legally insufficient and should not have been used in the recount because they could not be authenticated as original ballots cast. Moreover, the petition cites that over 120 absentee, early vote, and election day ballots appear to be missing. Further, discrepancies were found in the recount of the results. Finally, during the computer tabulations of ballots on election day and during the recount, notarized affidavits report that obstructions of official central counting station watchers and recount watchers had occurred, and that is true. While the petition cites that the sum of the ballot and the tabulation issues are enough to potentially invalidate the official results, the lawsuit also raises that the City of Fredericksburg and Gillespie counties' sign ordinances are overly restrictive, are unconstitutional, and violated free speech laws. And that's because what this is referring to is that in the state of Texas and other states, I believe, you could do what's called electioneering, which means that you can stand outside of where people are voting, particularly in the early ballots phase or the early voting phase, and talk to them to say, hey, by the way, that fluoride amendment, if you vote yes, that means you don't want fluoride. If you vote no, that means you want fluoride. It's very confusing. So I'm just here to clarify that, and any questions you might have on the amendment and fluoride, I'm here to answer those questions for you. You can legally do that. What they did is they basically redistricted the parking lot and made it so people had to go park in an area that was closer than the 100-foot restriction, which meant that Jeanette and Angela, who were down there, could not go and do the electioneering. They measured it off, they quarantined it, and made it impossible for them to be able to speak to people. That is what happened. And that will be talked about and addressed. Okay, the voting provisions of the Texas Constitution and Texas Election Code are important safeguards to ensuring honest and verifiable elections. What happens when officials ignore mandatory election laws dealing with tabulations, recounts, and free speech? In this case, if the judge finds that so many illegalities occurred and the election results cannot be ascertained or validated, the court has the authority to declare the election void and a new election could be ordered. How about that? So we're going to send this out, and we've got exhibits A and B. These will all be live links. I'm going to have this on the Clean Water Fred homepage. I'll post it on the Clean Water Fred Facebook page. And we have to raise money again for this because this is a big suit. And we're using a different fundraiser this time. We're not using GoFundMe because GoFundMe threw a monkey wrench into our fundraising at the 11th hour. One of our donors, who's consistently helped us throughout the election, was donating some 11th hour money to us. And we couldn't get to it because GoFundMe decided that they had questions about the donor. I mean, really? This person's been donating for the better part of a year. You never had any questions before. All his information is there. It's the same person, the same email address. And we really needed that money. So they threw a spanner in the works, as they say. Was that intentional? You have to ask yourself why. We got the money, but it was like, screw you, we're not going to use you. And I've heard that GoFundMe has really has basically eliminated people that use GoFundMe for their anti-vax campaigns. So, let's not support these people. So we have a new fundraiser. It's called Fundraiser. And the reason why this is an important act and action is twofold. Number one, it's to make sure at a local level that the process is in place. And we've taken some heat already. It's like the local dentist. They're a bunch of sore fucking losers. It's going to waste time and energy, and they're interfering with the democratic process. They're not. No. What we're doing is we're ensuring that process actually is vetted. Now, one of the drivers behind, now we have lawyers, by the way, we have bipartisan lawyers, and these guys are hotshot lawyers that deal with code, that deal with civil suits against cities and counties. So these are some very high-powered lawyers, and there's enough meat on the bones here that they've decided to take the case on at a reduced fee. So they're not charging us their full fee for this case. And the driver behind this is this gal, Laura Presley, whom I've talked about before on this show. And Laura essentially had her election stolen from her in a district inside Austin. And Laura she figured out how it was stolen. And she got in and she sued. She lost the first case. She was fined heavily. She decided to elevate her case. Guess what? She lost again. Double the fine. So one level left, the state Supreme Court of Texas. She decides to roll the dice because if she loses there, she's got triple the fines and she's, essentially ruined for life financially. The state of Texas overturned the two previous lower court rulings, eliminated all those fines, and found that there was indeed irregularities that impeded the election results. Unfortunately, this is 2.5 years after the actual election, so she couldn't go back and contest it in a timely fashion. But it's her kind of dogged determination that got to that place. Anyway, Laura's on our team, and the city of Fredericksburg and the county of Gillespie were put on notice. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this thing unfolds. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I haven't been able to talk about it very much. And, and these things take time. Like this case could go on for 2 or 3 years. But if there's updates that I can share along the way, I'll be happy to. Other than that, I'm only sharing with you what the press release says. Okay, so a little unfinished business there. Let's see if you guys have any comments on that. Let's see. Hey, chat fam. Numbers 365 days from his website's absolutely fantastic. Good. Glad you got it, Isla. World Throat Whistling Contest is held in Mongolia. Average age of entrance is 85. Good luck. Lawyers are a different breed. They're just a different breed. Covington, Louisiana has machines, flip votes, document approval. Yeah, they do that. Florida's toxic waste. Absolutely. Look at Kentucky's governorship also results, also Louisiana. They flipped it around with Virginia, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. Democratic sweep in 2020, President, House, Senate because of voter fraud. It's redistricting. The Matrix movie put an NPC and NPD against one another. Nobody loses in the end. That's interesting. Here in Fredericksburg, we had paper ballots, which is good. There you can check the paper ballots, but it was the signatory or the signatures on those ballots, the missing ballots. These were all enough in terms of irregularities and anomalies for 2 lawyers. By the way, these lawyers wouldn't have taken on this case if there wasn't any meat on the bone. Okay, these are 2 very high-powered lawyers in Austin working at a local and a state level, obviously because Austin is the capital of Texas. So they understand that there's some smoke here. Anyway, as we move on, I'll keep you posted. All right. Okay. Speaking of smoke, I wanted to get into the Virginia thing because it's being a bit troubling now. I have to say, it's being a bit troubling. So why is Ralph Northam being so bold? Ralph Northam, of course, is the governor of Virginia, spearheading this anti-gun drive within the great state of Virginia. I mean, why is he pedal to the metal? Why is it? Because a lot of times, what you'll see with these anti-gun measures is that they'll happen sort of behind the lines, right? They'll be occulted or obscured. This is not what's happening now, right? They're way out in front, man. This is like they're telling you what's going to happen. This is predictive programmed to some degree. So why is he so emboldened to do this? My sense is that he's gotten the word, right? That's the word. They're like, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is how it's going to go down. And we have your back. We have your back. Whether the we is, the deep state or the UN or whatever, right? It's like they are and have been aligning for this moment. This is not just a year ago, Ralph Northam saying, hey, let's ban guns. Now, they've been working on this for a while because there's infrastructure in place that people cannot see to support where they're going with this. Can't see it. But he wouldn't be as bold or so bold if he didn't understand or know that this infrastructure to support this decision, to support these actions, was in place and ready to go. He's a Virgo, for crying out loud. Virgos are not the Virgo in Virginia. Ooh, how about that? There's a little language sync. Anyway, so there's more shenanigans. Let's get you caught up to speed here for as much as I can with this thing. So this is recent now. Oh, it's not recent. My bad. December 22nd. I'm always looking for the, 5 years ago. See, this is what I'm talking about, that the infrastructure is already in place. Virginia revokes handgun permit agreement with 25 states. I'll show you the recent thing. So concealed handgun permits held by residents of 25 states will no longer be valid in Virginia. So this is Attorney General Mark Herring, a Democrat, said the state will revoke its reciprocity agreement. So this has been going on for a while. The move means that Virginians will no longer be able to use their concealed handgun permits in 6 states that require mutual reciprocity agreement: Florida, Louisiana, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Wyoming. The top Republican in the GOP-controlled House of Delegates, that's no longer the case, said that Herring is damaging the integrity of the office he holds. So this is part of the infrastructure that they've aligned, right? They've been working on this for a while already. That was the iceberg that's beneath the surface. Let me give you the recent stuff here. If I can find this. Okay, so this is the recent stuff. This is actually from the Virginia-Israel Advisory Board. Enter and succeed in the U.S. through Virginia. The Virginia-Israel Advisory Board is a government agency that helps Israeli companies build and grow their U.S. operations in Virginia. So this is the VIAB, and they are a government agency, which means that you people of Virginia are funding this, okay? We make business happen between Israel and Virginia. So what kind of business are we talking about? This is from January 3rd, 2020. This is this year. Israeli Unmanned Systems, Naval and Avionics Defense Delegation visiting Virginia. At the invitation of Governor Ralph Northam, the Israeli Ministry of Defense, it's the IDF, folks, is bringing a delegation of 20 Israeli companies with autonomous systems, avionics, and naval technologies to the Commonwealth, February 3rd through the 6th, 2020. So we're going to look at the list here, including the 3 largest Israeli defense contractors are seeking to source $800 million of goods and services, develop R&D, manufacturing, and sales partnerships with Virginia concerns, as well as meet with state agencies, counties, cities to understand their requirements for HLS, law enforcement, securing infrastructure, and related technologies. Virginia companies, please consider which Israeli companies you would like to meet and contact them with via emails in their link to company list. Then inform us to arrange a B2B meeting. There are strong synergies between Virginia and Israeli business, particularly manufacturing, maritime, and military-related industries. In 20 years, we brought 100 Israeli companies to Virginia and helped them grow. Strauss's Group's 100 million, Sabra Hummus Factory, Zim's Israel Shipping Lines, North America headquarters, Teva Pharmaceuticals manufacturing plant, and 25 defense and cybersecurity companies. Of course, Langley's in Virginia, so that's going to happen, right? So let's look at these companies. Let's see who they are. Let's see the link to the company list. These are the unmanned systems, naval, and avionics companies. We have VDEP, Sabat, C2IAS, Virginia, Israel. Right, these are all the companies. Here we go. Oh, look at these. Magna, Windward, Elbit, Raphael, Sand, Shalat, Optronics, ADL, General Robotics, Magam Safety. Sounds a lot like MAGA, doesn't it? Blur Systems, IAI, AccuBeat, City Shop, Colugo, Astronautics. What do these companies do? Aerostats for intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, communications applications, 2 million operational hours. perimeter protection of borders and sensitive sites. The only company in the world with 3D detection, the first with real-time fusion of thermal imaging and visible detectors. Do you guys feel comfortable with this? Do you feel comfortable with this level of surveillance being implemented at a state level? Do you really feel this? If you're living in Virginia or you're living in the state, and these are the contractors, how do you feel? And I don't care what the country is. Let's say it was China. Oh, if it was China, boy, this would look a lot different, wouldn't it? There would be a lot more outrage. Or if it was Russia, are you freaking kidding me? Maritime intelligence, smart maritime data through access to proprietary global, historical, and live information on vessels and shipping patterns. Global defense and HLS manufacturer, leader in unmanned systems, seeking USV partner, large defense and HLS contractor, underwater, naval, ground, and air systems to space systems. Tactical breaching kits, allows one operator to break into any structure fast. Woo. Micro aerostat night vision electro-optical solutions sold to U.S. Navy and Coast Guard. You know where they R&D'd all this stuff, by the way? They R&D'd it in places like Gaza, in Syria, right? These are the war theaters where they R&D all this stuff. What else do we have? Shooting range solutions and training with electronic targets that remotely calibrate weapons. Think about that. Think about that for a moment, right? You have a gun, and your gun is a smart gun. It's a smart weapon, which means they can turn it on or turn it off anytime they want, right? Turn it on, turn it off anytime they want. So let's say, for instance, you're somebody who's been insured with a weapon, which is local law enforcement. Maybe you're somebody who, and I believe this will be the future of weapons, by the way. They'll be smart weapons, and they'll turn them on or turn them off. Or they can calibrate them, in this case, meaning that they have real-time systems inside the weapons. They know if it's going to jam. They can recite things, you know. General Robotics develops robotic systems for indoor tactical lethal engagement and light weapon station, including anti-drone systems for law enforcement, anti-terror. Do we need this? Does the state of Virginia need this stuff, right? Why? Why? Who's the perpetrators within the state of Virginia? And if you're a citizen of the state of Virginia, guess what? Your taxpayer dollars are going to go pay for these companies. You're basically ultimately paying for your own surveillance. So this is all these companies are going. See, this is where Emily and I talked about Project Veritas. And if Project Veritas was really invested in the truth, they'd go to one of these things. They'd insert themselves into one of these confabs, right? And just like asking pertinent questions about the Clinton campaign or the Sanders campaign, asking pertinent questions about the ramping up militarization. Make no mistake, the state of Virginia is becoming militarized, and these companies are going to help Virginia become militarized. And it's kind of, you know, and I don't think Virginia is the only state where I mean, this has been taking place for a long time. Like, look at the records post 9/11, when we had DHS and all this money was going to these local first responders and, you know, sheriffs and local police, and they could not spend the money on hires, but they could spend the money on weapons and or consultation and training. And I've talked about this before, how sergeants, certain tactical people inside of various police departments, sergeants, the chief of police, etc., would go to Israel and become trained in how to deal with crowds, how to deal with threats, all through the IDF, right? And then they would bring those training and the tactical measures and even their consultants back into their area. And one of the police chiefs that had gone and made that journey to Israel was the police chief that was involved in the Michael Brown incident in just outside of St. Louis. So he had his finger, he had been there and done that. So this has been going on for a while now. You know, we talked about the militarization of the local police, buying tanks that are no longer usable on the war front. Like, okay, we're going to decommission this tank, but maybe we get some money out of it. Well, why don't we sell, why don't we sell it to Fairfax County? They could use a tank, right? So a lot of this has been going on so the local and state police have been ramping up and becoming more militarized since 9/11. And here you can clearly see with the list of providers that it's not just, how do you subdue a crowd? This is high level, really high level, tactical defense strategic companies. And how are they going to get paid? They're going to get paid on the backs of Virginia's tax dollars. Just think about that. And this is why there's such a anti-BDS movement happening. And again, let's just take the name of the country out of the equation. It could be any country. If you were looking at this and it said Russia, how would you feel? You'd feel pretty pissed. You would say, but for some reason, right? It's like, oh, well, these are guys are great friends, and they're gonna allow, they're gonna help us, so they're okay. Well, the whole idea of militarizing your state is wrong to begin with. Why do you want to militarize your state? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of the people? Are you afraid that the people are going to kind of wake up, and when they do, you're going to have all your ducks in a row, and all your information, and all your data, and all your surveillance, and all your tactical forces in alignment in a row? Is that really what you're afraid of? So if people wake up and they say, I really don't dig this, I don't think we should be supporting this, I think we should be boycotting this. Now there are all these anti-BDS laws that say you can't do that. You cannot do that. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, was it Wyoming just recently signed a law into effect that if you stop doing business or don't do business with an Israeli company because you're not on some kind of humanitarian, or you don't have the same kind of humanitarian or political, you don't share the same ideology, well, guess what? You can be denied doing business with the state of Wyoming. Think about that. Your own state can deny you doing business. And by the way, I'll play devil's advocate here. Let's bring these guys up one more time. Aren't there American companies that can do this shit? Right? I bet there are. I bet there are American companies that can do this. Well, why isn't the state of Virginia at least employing American companies to essentially enforce and imprison their own citizenry? I'm sorry. It's kind of true though, right? There's no American companies there. Maybe there are, I don't know. Maybe it'll be kind of a wonderful thing where you have Israeli companies and Argentinian companies and American companies and German companies, and they're all there with their defense contracts and all their weapons and tools of Sauron waiting to be bid on, but somehow I don't think so. So Virginia, you got to be on your toes on a lot of levels. And one of the stated goals of AIPAC, because AIPAC has been deeply involved in, of course, AIPAC being a big lobby, has been deeply involved in influencing the federal government. Well, they've already knocked that one down, right? Now they're moving into influencing state governments and bringing this kind of handshake deal between Israeli business interests and the state and the state's business interests. It's funded by taxpayer dollars, right? Yeah. So just wanted to bring that to your awareness. That's going on right now. And I doubt if Virginia is the sole recipient of such high-level technology coming from part of the world that is willing to put together a basket of technologies and take care of all of Virginia's defense and surveillance needs, which I have no understanding as to why they'd want those things. Was Virginia at war with somebody? Yeah, I know there's ports there, you know, but the port in Norfolk is, you know, connected to the Navy, and the Navy can run its own surveillance and have its own kind of contractors. It's not dependent on the state. It's a naval yard. Anyway, again, we're seeing this Saturn-Pluto conjunction and, you know, just being aware of what's going on behind the scenes. But I'd love for a Project Veritas to go to that place, get undercover, get the skinny. This is what Emily was talking about. And to her point, I would totally support that. All right, let's see what you guys are talking about in chat. Let's see, the towers come down. Next thing you know, of course, 100-page Patriot Act. Funny how those things are waiting like that. Yep. RP, you're so great at connecting stuff. OTB in Covington, I'll be there tomorrow. I think our friend Laura is there as well. To see our beautiful country systematically destroyed. You know, this is a great comment, Ani. It's a great comment because there is a real sense of pathos when it comes to looking at what's happened to this country. Real sense of pathos. And it's really unfortunate. And the more that we have outside influence, and I don't care where that outside influence is coming from, whether it's China or Russia or, you know, the crown city of London or Israel, I don't care. But the more outside influence that we allow into the country to, first of all, feed their agenda, second of all, shape, reshape, and contort our collective identity, it's worse for the American people. It's worse for the American people. I mean, just look at the H1N1, is that what it's called? The visas? You know, when they started that, when globalization started, which was, in fact, I got a client next week that I'm gonna be working with. Guess what? She lost her job. Why? Her country's moving overseas. Globalization has not stopped, right? Globalization has not stopped. You know, Trump says he wants to make America great again. Instead of playing, you know, tariff footsie with the Chinese, you know, what Trump and his conquistadors should be doing is fining any country that leaves the United States. Oh, you're gonna move manufacturing out of the United States? Well, guess what? You're gonna pay an exit fee. You're gonna pay an exit fee. And your exit fee to move your manufacturing or your production or your operations out of the state is going to be 1/4 of your next 5 years income. And you can pay it up front, or we can take it out on a yearly basis. Your call. And we'll take your last 5 years and we'll estimate it. This is your exit fee. And then you take that money and you put it into some kind of redevelopment fund so that it can support entrepreneurs. Because we, at our heart, this country is an entrepreneurial country. We are the spirit of entrepreneurialism. No other country does it better than us. And it's been that way for a long time. So that's what I would do. It's like, oh, fine, you can go overseas. You're going to pay an exit fee, though. Oh, no, you can't do that. Yes, I can. Absolutely, I can. And if you don't pay an exit fee now, whatever goods and services you're bringing to the country, I will heavily tariff them. I'll get it one way or the other. Your call. And then you set up things like new companies and reorientation for people. Because when we look at the homeless situation, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. The homeless situation is a result of people that are lost, people that have lost their jobs, they've lost their homes, they've lost their families. And you can put globalization right at the top of that list. Right at the top of that list. Those people are the flotsam and the jetsam and the refugees of the global game, of the globalist war. They're on the front lines and they're the casualties. They are the walking wounded of the working world and the working class. And they're lost and they're drug addicted. And now in this weird kind of bizarre, guilt syndrome, the democratic cities have said, okay, well, we're just going to turn our cities into kind of an open air favela where you can shit and piss all over the place because we feel so bad over the fact that we sat there and not only watched it happen, but we profited off of globalism. This is our way of making it up to you. We'll give you like a soft, cushy poo-poo pad to live in. I don't think that they've like consciously worked that out, but I think that's in there somewhere. That's the weird kind of, dark reciprocity that's happened. It's happened. And I got a client next week and I have to work with this person and say, okay, well, what are we going to do? They're no spring chicken. They're my age. How are we going to get you to this next phase of your life? And she's not the only person that's having to go through this. And just wait till AI comes online. It's gonna get ugly. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's sitting down and saying, we really need to reinvest in the infrastructure of this country. That's not happening. Trump, a long time ago, said, I'm going to be the infrastructure president. And this is one of the things that he probably could have done. And he probably could have gotten the Democrats on board because they love their infrastructure. But has that happened? Not to my knowledge. Maybe somebody more informed in the chat room may be able to put something out or show me what's happened. No, instead, we're like fucking around in the Middle East, doing gangland hits. And Trump's, doing a WWF thing with the Democrats and the impeachment, and nothing's getting done. Meanwhile, the forces of Sauron are starting to assemble in Virginia. And the whole thing is just kind of comical. And nobody's talking about the real issues. The real issues is that we have a nation of walking wounded, and they're out there, and they're causing damage. They're killing people. They're infecting people. Oh, we'll just let it happen. We don't, we need to show them compassion. I was watching this documentary last night, and I was looking around at this city in Inner Mongolia. And of course, I didn't see all the city. But I got to tell you, it was clean. It was clean. And I doubt there were very few homeless there. I doubt there were a lot of homeless there. I didn't see them. And what you did see is you saw people who didn't have a whole lot, but they had little sidewalk stalls where they were selling Chinese long bean and cherries. So it was a positive relationship with the sidewalks and the streets. What if you turn those people into vendors once they were able to get through their addiction? Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool to have little like sidewalk vendors in Austin? You can buy fruits and vegetables and cold drinks. Oh, I'm sure the businesses in Austin would fucking hate it. Wouldn't that be great? That's a unique way. Oh, let's go. Well, let's start a farm and a collective. Let's get these people out there. Let's get them cleaned out. Let's take care of their drugs. Let's grow vegetables. Let's use that as kind of a way to, bring them back into society, give them a living wage. Let's explore some things like, mushroom or psilocybin therapy or whatever we have at our disposal. Let's get them on CBD. Let's find some ways to get them straight. And then let's set up these unique little like vendor stands throughout the city that they can work at. And, they're on the streets, but it's a reintegration of being on the streets in a positive way. Cold drinks, vegetables, We got tons of food here in Texas. Pecans, peaches, you name it. Get them out there. You know, this is what they do in third world countries or China. You know, they'll have these little vendors on the street selling their shit. This country needs vision. Vision. Where's the vision? There's no fucking vision. Even the Democrats, you know, Bernie Sanders, he's got no vision. It's all about, well, we're going to tax the fucking rich. We're going to all give you free health care. That's not a vision. That's not a vision. That's communism. There's no vision there. We talked about this with Emily. Would he go after Bernie Marcus or Paul Singer or Sheldon Adelson? Hell no, he wouldn't do that. He'd go after somebody who just made their first million. That's what he'd go after. He'd go after somebody who who pays their employees well, but they're not unionized. That's who he'd go after. Because in their heart of hearts, communists are bullies. That's what they are. But there's no vision. I mean, Andrew Yang has a little bit of vision. Do you really trust Andrew Yang? I'm not sure I trust Andrew Yang. A little bit of vision there, though. Thank God. Even Marianne Williamson had a little bit of vision, and I don't really like her. But when she talked about we don't have a medical problem, we have a wellness problem. Oh, hello? Everybody says, oh, we need Medicare, Medicaid for all. And really? Well, what about the quality of it? You know, what about the things that are causing people to get sick? It's just too broad. It's too much of an issue for them to handle. Because then you got to drill down and you got to take on the pharmaceutical companies. And none of them want to do that because that's where their palms are being greased. Oh, they don't want to turn those people off. They want those rich allies on their side. That's why there's no vision. Trump had a vision. He had a vision. He was like the first visionary president. Obama had a bogus vision. Hope and change is not a vision. Hope and change is not a strategy. It's not. Hope and change. Hope and change. Really. How pathetic is that? Make America great again? That's not a bad vision. It's not. What defines great? What defines America? Over time, has that really been excavated? And if so, then that's what we should be doing. You know, and it started off well. SoFi investing in America. Well, of course they're investing. They're investing in Boston Dynamics, the robot company. They're investing in Jared Kushner's buddy with WeWork. That's who SoFi was investing in. Well, speaking of Jared Kushner, I got to show you guys this. Some of you have probably seen this. Get ready. Here he comes. Right on time. The family business, the unusual power of Jared Kushner. Interesting placement of the M, if I do say so myself. Inside Jared Kushner's unusual White House role. Jared Kushner's White House office is a shrine to his own influence. Gold-framed accolades from his father-in-law hang on the walls, written in thick black Sharpie in President Donald Trump's spiky hand. To Jared, great job on Mexico. Thanks, Dad, reads one, a limestone replica of the plaque marking the move of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, which Kushner helped orchestrate. Rests atop a bookcase. There's his medal representing the Order of the Aztec Eagle, the highest award given to foreigners by the Mexican government, with whom Kushner hammered out a trade deal. Above the door is a commemorative poster for the criminal justice bill. Kushner shepherded, signed by the rapper Kanye West. To Jared from your friend Yee. Short for Yeezus, by the way. Near his desk sits a rack of folders with handwritten labels that nod Kushner's unrealistically broad policy portfolio: healthcare, Lebanon, border infrastructure, Central America, Econ Plan, POTUS Environment, DOJ. United States of America, here is your visionary, right here. This is the vision that we are now being guided by and being stewarded, guiding to and stewarded by. This is the vision. The office is smaller than the others lining the wall of the West Wing, where some of the president's top aides cloister, but Kushner, an erstwhile real estate developer, values getting oversized and chose the space adjoining Trump's private dining room. So you could fucking listen in on him. President's favorite hideaway, not the biggest office in the world, but it's a good location. He explains to Time. Kushner likes to show the visitors the spot on the wall where a door to the president's inner sanctum was plastered over. This is where Monica used to come in, he says of the former White House intern who visited Bill Clinton's study. So they are announcing the arrival of Jared Kushner. Okay, this is significant. This is significant. Remember, Jared Kushner's home business address is 666 Fifth Avenue in New York City. And Kushner, of course, is Capricorn, right? Jared Kushner, Greta Thunberg, Capricorn energy. The most telling thing that I saw with his chart a long, long time ago, and I think it was actually my last visit to my last visits to Gaia tend to be a little controversial because, well, they are, and then I stopped going there. Right? So when my show ended, I talked about Obama's chart. And then the last time I was there with Regina, I talked about Jared Kushner, and I talked about how his true node was on his Pluto, on Trump's Pluto in the 12th house. So Kushner is tapped into his life purpose in Leo, is tapped into Trump's Pluto. So it almost has like the quality of being a succubi or a succubus, right? An incubus. He's it's there. He's tapped into that Plutonian source of power inside of Trump's 12th house. And in a lot of ways, that's also quite representative of his proximity from his office to the private dining room, where the most private and intimate of conversations take place, always over food, in Trump's case, likely Big Macs or Whoppers. All right, let me check in with you guys inside of Chatlandia. I'm about ready to get out of here today. Let's see, weird pollution-induced deformities. I've wondered if Kushner has some dirt on Ivanka and is blackmailing Trump. That's a really, really interesting question. Interesting question. Possibly. Quite possibly. Quite possibly. I don't know the answer to that. But since, everything is about kind of leverage, if you ever want to watch the Manual for Psychopathology, watch that movie Battlefield Earth with John Travolta and Forrest Whitaker and what's that guy's name, Barry Pepper. Watch that movie. It's based on the L. Ron Hubbard science fiction novel. And it is the manual for sociopathology. And it's all about the concept of leverage. Educate yourselves. Kushner looks feminine. He does look very feminine, Dawn. You're not the only person that has said that. Let's take a look at that again. Look at the hips. He's got a really thin waist and wide hips, right? A thin waist and wide hips. And his shoulders look, isn't this like one of the giveaways? His shoulders are more narrow than his hips. What do you think? What do you guys think? Super thin waist, wide hips, shoulders more narrow than the hips. What do you think about that? Give me your thoughts. That rings true. He's a girl. The psychic said maybe Mrs. Obama would be Biden's VP. Maybe. Netflix documentary on Bikram, the yoga guru, shows psychopathy. I have to see that, although I stopped watching Netflix. Kushner reminds me of Data in Star Trek. That's a really good call, actually. Scary droid, dude looks like a lady, pear-shaped lady. Very feminine physique. Very much so. And if you ever listen to him talk, he talks like a woman. He's very soft-spoken. So maybe he is the Mosiach, which is what the Shabbat Lubavitchers have been waiting for. The Mosiach, the Messiah. Maybe that's where Jared Kushner is to them. In any case, apparently now it's his time because he's on the cover of Time magazine. Would it be possible that there's a President Kushner in our future? You're damn right there could be. Absolutely. Absolutely. If not by vote, then by some form of weird confluence, right? What if Mike Pence in his second term, let's say Trump gets reelected, and we do have an election, which could be a bit dicey. I'd say it's about 60-40 at this point. But let's say he gets reelected. That does not ensure Mike Pence a smooth, clean ride in the second term. And if Mike Pence stepped down, Trump could pick anybody as his successor for vice president. And after 4 years in the White House, sitting by the president's elbow with all these wonderful accolades and accomplishments, would Jared Kushner not be a reasonable, worthwhile candidate in the eyes of the world? Quite possibly. And what happens if that dreaded curse of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which took out people like Lincoln and Kennedy? What if it happens on Trump's watch? And Jared Kushner is the vice president, and all of a sudden we got President Kushner. Because do you think people would actually vote for Jared Kushner for president? I don't think so. But could he become president by proxy through a number of different sort of moves? I think absolutely that could be the case. Keep your eyes on it. It's his time, apparently. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today. Yeah, Ivanka does have a deep, husky voice. You're right. Very deep. Very, very deep. He may be the hermaphrodite. That's quite possible. That's quite possible. There's a really interesting movie. I think you might even be able to watch it on YouTube. And when I was a kid in high school, I saw this movie at the drive-in, and I was totally fascinated by it. I was obsessed by the idea of the Antichrist, by the way, when I was a kid. Totally obsessed by it. I don't know, maybe it's Uranus on my ascendant. Anyway, then that movie originally was called Demon. And then it was later renamed God Told Me To. And in the movie, it was directed by Larry Cohen, who's kind of an infamous guerrilla filmmaker. And in the movie, there is a series of murders that take place. And each time they get close to this murder taking place, the person who is the perp says, God told me to. And the detective is this guy, Tony LoBianco, who was in a number of TV shows back in the 70s, namely Police Story, probably most famously known for his role in the independent cult classic, The Honeymoon Killers. So in the movie, Tony LoBianco plays a devout Catholic who is obsessed with finding out who this person is and was telling these people to kill these various people. And he finds that there are a number of high-ranking business people, right? You know, corporate heads who meet with this character who kind of has this glow about him and looks like Jesus. And this is this being, this entity that is telling them to do things and has this telepathic connection with them. And it turns out that this being an entity, I don't want to blow it too much for you because you really should watch it. And I think it's free on YouTube. It's called God Told Me To. Used to be called Demon. And in that movie, I'm just going to tell you that this idea of Baphomet and the Antichrist begin to surface. There's other wrinkles that I don't want to get into because I don't want to be a spoiler about it. Now, what's also interesting is currently there's a new movie out on Netflix. Of course, since we're talking about Netflix, the name of the movie is, let me pop this up. Messiah. Will he convert you or con you? Asks the 10-episode series trailer for Netflix's Messiah. It's released on January 1st. Not to be shown in the Hashemite kingdom. So this is a guy who plays the role, perhaps, of the world's Messiah or the Antichrist. So this is surfacing now on Netflix. Hidden in Plain Sight, predictive programming, Jared Kushner, cover of Time magazine. You do the math, right? And perhaps there is more than one Antichrist. You ever think about that? Perhaps there's more than one Antichrist. Perhaps there's a whole team of them. And we were led to believe that there was just one. A long time ago, when I was in my 20s, I had this kind of feeling and vision of what that was like and what this entity would be. And it wasn't really a person per se, but it was an energy, right? It was an energy that was spreading across the planet. And it wasn't personified by one person, but it was almost like the very molecules of the air that we breathe. That's what it was like. So maybe we have to kind of rethink what this is or how it looks or how it feels. But clearly, there's some very interesting indications now with the Netflix TV series, the movie, Jared Kushner on the cover of Time. These themes are going to start to bubble up. Keep your eye on them. Keep your eye on them. All right, I'm going to get out of here. See what you guys have to say. I watched it a little over the top. Yeah, I'm not going to watch it since I don't have Netflix. I'm on out of here. Okay. Is the God Told Me To from the 70s? Yes. It's from the 70s. It's worth watching. It's worth watching. I remember watching that film as a kid in a drive-in movie theater in high school, and I was like, oh man, it's so fucking cool. It's the kind of movie I'd want to make. Anyway, all right. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step on what's possible. Tread lightly during this time, this period, and try to treat each other kindly, compassionately, but also don't fall in the trap of enabling and being complicit to somebody else's kind of emotional agenda. Right? Get to the core of it. Don't get hooked in. Don't get snared. Do your best. It's not easy because we all have trigger points. We all have, the hooks inside of us. We're like, we all have that, but this is a time where we can kind of, begin to rise above and use some of this Capricornian kind of, high level discernment, which I think is what Capricorn really brings to the table. Okay. All right. I love you, each and every one of you. I may not be back on Sunday night this weekend because there's the San Francisco 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. Some very interesting numerology around the Packers and the Chiefs and the Super Bowl, which I'll get into, not now, but maybe I'll throw a post up on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter. All right. I'll see you guys more than likely on Tuesday. Okay. All right. Have a great weekend. Find me at robertphoenix.com over on Facebook, and take care for now. Bye.